Hello my friends and welcome back. It's Friday, so happy Friday to you and happy Friday and birthday to this Ukrainian soldier. He's celebrating his 23rd birthday on the front in a dugout, as we can see. I'm guessing this is gunpowder he took out of the bullets, and that's 23, that's his birthday cake, just on a plank of wood. It doesn't make him sad, he can still celebrate. But now, my friends, we jump to Kursk because everybody's attention is there in the recent days because Russians started their counteroffensive after gathering huge reserves into the area from southern and eastern Ukraine. Let's see how the Russian counteroffensive is doing against the Ukrainians. Russians have retaken 2 villages in the Kursk region. The Russian presence in the Krasnoktyabrskoye, I can't the names of Russian villages. Red October is the name of this village. Krasnoktyabrskoye is backed by visual evidence. They entered the village through the forest northeast of the village, and you can see Krasnoktyabrskoye is right here on the western flank of Ukrainian Kursk held territories, and Russians entered from the forest, took the village, also took Komarovka, which is south from Krasnoktyabrskoye, and now they're moving east towards Ukrainian-held positions. Now retaking 2 villages, not a very big change of hands of territory, but it's something. So if we zoom out a little bit, look at the more macro level of operations, how effective has the Russian counteroffensive been against Ukrainian defenses in Kursk? Based on information from Russian northern group sources, it can be assumed that their counteroffensive in Kursk has lost momentum. The Russian 64th Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade in full force is going to be transferred from Zaporizhia direction to the Kursk direction. As expected, a full-fledged counteroffensive would require greater forces than those currently assembled. That comes from a Russian Telegram channel. It was laughable that Russians held off sending reserves to Kursk as long as they did. It tells me that informing Putin that 100 meters were gained today in Donetsk was more important than losing 1,300 square kilometers of Russian soil, which is the amount that Ukrainians controlled in Kursk. They were politically frozen as they downplayed the rebels along the border, and now they have to fight well-supplied and entrenched Ukrainian forces on Russian soil. We can see here on the blue the area that Ukraine controls in Kursk. You can see here this is the same river, and Ukraine is really heavily destroying every bridge that Russians are trying to build over this river, real or pontoon, doesn't matter, it gets destroyed immediately. So this pocket here is a very dangerous one for the Russians. And now let's jump to even more recent events in Kursk about the Russian counteroffensive because, get this, I'm not joking, the Ukrainians have attacked. The Ukrainians have made their own counteroffensive to the Russian counteroffensive. Yeah, not kidding you. Lots of movement today in Kursk. Russians claim to have retaken Kardivka, Viktorovka, Pyakhovo, Apanazovka, Snagost. You can see that the majority of fighting is happening in the areas that we just looked on the map. That's the western part of the Ukrainian-held territory in Kursk. But now, check this out. You see that this is Ukraine, this is Russia. That's the border in between. And the blue ticks you see on the map here is where the latest fighting has been reported to happen. Notice anything weird about it? Well, this is the direction that flanks directly the Russian counteroffensive to the western part of Ukrainian-held territory. So through this cross-border incursion from the blue markers area you see on the map, Ukrainians are pushing to the side of the Russian counteroffensive, counteroffensing the counteroffensive. Wow. Likely the objective for Ukrainian forces in the reported new incursion in Kursk is the town of Dmitriev. Taking this down will road and rail supply to Lvov and Rilsk from the north, making the only supply route for Russian forces. So in this video you can see Ukrainians crossing the border, and Ukrainian engineering vehicle has already removed Russian dragon's teeth from the border, and this is not the original Ukrainian incursion into Kursk. This is the new border incursion that is happening now to flank the Russian counteroffensive. And you can see Ukrainian infantry fighting vehicles, MRAPs, entering Russian territory. We have Telegram channels that report from Russian side that Ukrainian infantry is disembarking or landing from the MRAPs and occupying positions in the woods. Against the backdrop of our guys' counterattacks, the enemy is attempting to attack across the border of the Klushkovsky district. This comes from the Russian side. They are reporting from the field that on the section of the border opposite the settlement of Pavlovka, Ukraine, on our side, a Ukrainian troll is removing the dragon's teeth. The Ukrainian armed forces are clearing the area of mines. They are covered by a tank. Additional equipment is being pulled, and the infantry is dismounting. Information was also received about a large concentration of armored vehicles, motor vehicles, and enemy personnel in the area of the settlements of Kondratovka and Pervoye Maya in the Sumy district. The main battles today should be expected in the Abukovka-Lyubimovka area. A large-scale entry of the enemy reserves should also be expected. This is what we hear from the Russians today, one day after they started their counteroffensive to the Ukrainian held territory in Kursk, and one day later, Ukrainians counterattacked the Russian counterattack. It's crazy, it's wild, and I really like it. My friends, we have seen plenty of videos of Ukrainian Thermite drones, dragon drones, fire-breathing drones, or just fire drones, whatever you want to call them. We've seen videos of them dropping thermite, but we've never seen them up close. So here it is. This is the canister, and this is the drone itself. Close-up view, first of a kind of a Ukrainian fire drone. Doesn't look nothing special, but it does so much. It does so much that the Russians haven't done yet. They haven't completed this innovation. They're trying to figure out and catch up to the Ukrainians. But as of now, Ukraine controls the monopoly of fire drones on the front. Looks pretty awesome. And as you can tell, it's pretty heavy. You know, the drone goes down first. But my friends, talking about the fire drones, I have a surprise coming up for you. I'm just gonna say it's connected to Thermite drones, and you're gonna find out on Monday, so in 3 days. But right now, without the surprise being here yet, go and surprise your grandmother. Does your grandmother already has a snuggly, cozy, with love from Ukraine hoodie? This green one, for example, where a Ukrainian Baba Yaga, bought by you, by the way, in my campaign 2 campaigns ago, is dropping a huge nade on a Russian T-72. I think your grandmother needs it. RehiStore.com, link is in the description below. Now my friends, we'll jump to eastern Ukraine, more specifically Pokrovsk, which is the Russian main offensive axis and where they have been most effective. The situation in Pokrovsk is very dangerous for the Ukrainians. As you can see on the map, also Russian salient on the line to Pokrovsk is very close to the city. Pokrovsk being the raid and logistical and highway hub for the Ukrainian armed forces. Everything flows through it, so they will defend it. As of last week beginning, Ukrainians have slowed the Russian onslaught, but not completely stopped it. The situation is extremely difficult and will not get better. The Russians have cut off the water supply to Pokrovsk and destroyed the connecting bridge with Mirnograd. They're talking about this bridge. This serves as a very important logistical highway, logistical track for the armed forces of Ukraine. Almost everything was flowing through it, and now the bridge is destroyed. You can still pass this area, but it takes a lot more time, and that is really horrible for the movement, the logistics. So Ukrainian armed forces are in a very dense situation defending Pokrovsk, knowing also it is the Russian main target right now. We're yet to see if Pokrovsk will be another Avdiivka or another Bakhmut, where Ukrainians defended tooth and nail and Russians made minor gains every day, taking huge losses, but in the end they still took these Ukrainian strong points. Or we see Ukrainians adapting a different strategy and counteroffensive before the situation evolves into similar to Bakhmut and Avdiivka, or if the Ukrainians will pull out. There are many possibilities because the Ukrainian army now is not the Ukrainian army 1 year ago. Now, my friends, I just want to give you a little bit of an eye candy because this is a beautiful chart. It's a chart ever since 1990, so 1991, Estonia got free from the Soviet Union, 20th of August, and also the other Baltics. Now, this is the chart of GDP and what happened immediately after we got free from the Soviet Union. Check this out. 1990, 1991, boom! 1992, 1 year after Estonia got free from the Soviet Union, we started from the bottom with Azerbaijan, and now we are next to Russia. And we overtook Russia in 1994, which was also the year that the last Russian troops left Estonia, and now we're free. I mean, they say Estonian SSR, but in 1994 it was full Estonia. I mean, I was born in 2 years, 1996. Check this out. Russia is falling behind. Latvia is coming, Lithuania is coming, the Baltic Tiger Jump, or the Baltic Miracle as they called it. It's 2000, year 2001, and our GDPs are racing ahead of the Russian GDP. Estonia being 9,000 per capita, Russia being 4,000 per capita. Now 2005, 6, and you can see how the Baltics changed. Russia is catching up. It took them some time. They will never catch up, but they are also growing. 2010, so 10 years under Putin's rule, and Russia has a GDP of 14,000 per capita. Estonia has 17,000 per capita. You know, Russians almost caught up to us, but now they're declining again. And falling pretty strongly, as you can see. This is a very simple and primitive chart, but it underlines so much truth. Just so much truth about the differences of governing a country after the fall of the Soviet Union. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania did something what was called a Baltic Miracle, where our GDPs, economies grew at a staggering pace for 10 years, insane pace, catching up to the Western powers in a decade, while Russia stagnated, even fell. My friends, now we'll jump to the Black Sea and to the skies over the Black Sea, because Ukrainian GUR Special Forces operators on boats, on attack boats, were raiding an oil platform, Russian oil platform, where suddenly they noticed a Russian Su-30 multi-role fighter jets up above. Well, actually one of their drones noticed it. And then one of the attack boats had an operator with a manpad on it. They took aim and fired. What happened was the manpad missile hit the Su-30, destroying it, and it fell to the sea. This is confirmed. There's a whole video of it. It's very interesting. Russian Su-30 is a supersonic fighter jet costing up to 50 million USD in the Western valuation. So it's a huge loss for the Russians. This means Ukrainians have ability to shoot down Russian air assets over the Black Sea by manpads. It's a very cheap and efficient way to destroy the enemy's air power. Specifically, it happened right south and east from Odessa. You can see the red square of where it happened approximately. This area is full under the raids, regular raids of Ukrainian special forces. This next news could be summarized by a sentence: Russia attacks a NATO ship. But it's not that easy or not that primitive. Yes, Russia did attack a ship that belongs to Turkey, but it wasn't a military ship, it was a grain ship. A Turkish-operated bulk carrier, MV Aya, has been hit by a Russian air-launched H-22 anti-ship missile in the Black Sea of Romanian coast, so Romanian territorial waters. The ship was carrying 26,550 tons of Ukrainian grain to Egypt. Now people are going crazy online saying, what will NATO do? This is a very direct attack against the NATO maritime asset because Turkey is a NATO member. We will yet to be seen, but seeing some of the NATO leaders' de-escalation policies, I don't think NATO will do much. Put Estonian, Latvian, Lithuanian, Finnish or Polish generals ahead of NATO's leading positions and you will see what NATO will do. I gotta include actually Netherlands in that list also, and the Nordics. But a little bit before, now I don't know if this is a coincidence or not, only one day before this incident that the Turkish ship was attacked, Turkish President Erdogan reaffirmed his stance on Ukraine. And I quote, "Our support for Ukraine's territorial integrity, sovereignty and independence is unwavering," Erdogan said in a video message to the 4th Crimean Platform Leaders Summit on Wednesday. And one day after he said that, a Russian missile attacked a Turkish maritime asset, a grain ship. Coincidence? I don't think so. Now we jump for one moment to Israel, because I don't really cover stories or topics from that area because I don't know about that area. I'm not an expert or read about that area. But this one special forces operation into Iranian-controlled Syrian bases is just out of this world. It's just something out of a Call of Duty game. It's very short and I want to read the summary of it. Israel has executed a daring special forces raid against Iranian underground weapons facility in Syria. During the heavy Israeli airstrikes against Masyaf, helicopters flew in with special forces. They captured 2 to 4 Iranians, liquidated 3 Syrians, took secret documents and left behind explosives that blew up the facility. The helicopters most likely flew 200 kilometers into Syria from the Mediterranean Sea. What a story, what a raid, what a mission. This is something you play on computer games, but this is what the Israeli special forces did, which are among the best special forces in the world. Now, my friends, I want to cover a whole combined topic, which can be summarized as neglect in Russia. Now, this is not explosive, this is not interesting in a way fire drones are, but it is very important and it underlines the downhill path of Russia as a culture, society, government, so everything Russian has these characteristics to it. And if you have these characteristics, you cannot be an efficient entity. You cannot be a country. Russia is a gas station with a mafia boss leading it. It's nothing more. This is an unhappy Russian citizen filming his car after he rode through a pothole or drove through a pothole in Russia. Suspension got ripped off. The potholes are so bad that you can't get around. I don't know how you live. Famous Maciejewskaya Krasnokamensk road. The road is full of potholes. It is impossible to pass. There are not even signs near many of these obstacles. Here is a hole. My suspension was ripped out. Our regional road. It's decent. I don't know who else to tell. Look at this. It's not an isolated event. If you think this pothole is big, it's probably only one. No. Most of the Russian roads have these holes. Roads in Moscow and St. Petersburg compared to the rest of Russia are semi-decent, but everything else is a hell for your car suspension. It will destroy it. Look at this. If you go through it like 60 miles an hour, like 100 kilometers per hour, you might die. But this is only the tip of the iceberg. Now we go into the rabbit hole. Check this out. I'm gonna scroll down. So this is Severodonetsk, Ukrainian city in Ukraine that was occupied by Russian fighters in 2014. And I've been to Ukraine 8 times. Ukraine is a European-minded country that is very strongly moving towards Europe. And you can see that in their cities also. They take care of their cities compared to Russia. This is Severodonetsk under the Russians. And they really took it back 30 years in the span of 2 years. I don't know how they manage it. I couldn't do it if I wanted to. In Russian smaller cities and rural areas, and also in the bigger cities, the poor population lives in houses like this. This is not a Soviet housing. This is not Khrushchevka. This is not Brezhnevka. This is a Tsarist era building. These buildings were built over 100 years ago under the last Tsar, and they have not been renovated since. They're very dangerous. It's a huge fire hazard, and they are the cheapest way of living. Most windows might be broken. There's no, isolation of heat because they didn't build it back then. How do you call it in English? Well, the communal payments are massive because there's no cold protection to the house. Sorry, my English is broken here, but the renovations for that have not been done. This is how majority of the Russians live. 1 second, Gene. I just want to check if Russia is getting cluster F'd. Yes. This is a situation you can see this also in Moscow and St. Petersburg, but in majority of Russian biggest cities, they have an issue with trash. Yeah, really. Why? They shouldn't. They have all the money and they have well-developed trash gathering systems, but the issue is stealing, because the guys who own the trash companies or the trash removal companies, they just take most of the money and just eliminate. The clearing of trash, the system, it runs on minimum capacity because the rest of the money is just going to the pockets of the owners, and it's been that way since the 90s, and the result is just trash on the streets. And it's accumulated for the last 30 years, basically. It's pretty bad. Now this is a Russian, I am not sure, it doesn't look like a Brezhnevka, but it's just, I think it's still apartments here, but this is an outhouse, so it's very often that in Russia the water pipes burst because they have not been renovated for the last 50 years. Putin has not put a dime to it. Even if he has, it's stolen. So very often in the winter and in the summer, in the peak seasons of hot and cold, the pipes burst. Meaning you cannot go to the toilet in your apartment and you're going to get heating. But in this instance, the apartment people have to go to the outhouse right in the center of the apartment complex. And here we can see Putin's electoral propaganda poster in a typical Russian city. You can see the roads are not paved. It's very common not to pave the roads because the money is stolen. And you can see the houses in the back. These are again Tsarist era houses, because in the Soviet times, under Stalin times, the architecture was Stalinist. It was mainly stone buildings. Then it was Khrushchevkas, again, brick buildings. Then it was Brezhnevkas or Panelkas. We know those commie blocks already. And then it was the 80s and 90s already. This is 1890s or 19 beginnings before the revolution. This is Tsarist era architecture in Russia. And they have not been renovated. And believe it or not, you can see people still live in those. And this is Putin's photo. This is the Russia he leads. It's very crazy. Sometimes the West doesn't have an idea of actually how the Russians live. I think it's very important to show this. See another outhouse. Here we can see a Russian electoral campaign or Olympic campaign, Sochi.ru. I went to Sochi actually, 2017. It's put on top of a house that is decaying. Here we can see a typical Russian road, not paved. So summer and when there's big water, it's all accumulating here. And in the winter, mud is accumulating here. If you don't have a huge off-road truck, you're screwed in Russia. Of course, there's no pedestrian road, so people have to walk through that almost every day. And we're not talking some isolated cities here. We're talking about tens of millions of Russians' daily lives in areas like this. Here we can see a similar area, but somebody has a bachelor party or like a wedding, so they have a Hummer limousine. And here you can see, these are typical Brezhnevkas which have been renovated. I mean, the Brezhnevka towers look like they did in Estonia also. They have been renovated. As you can see, this is a new layer of insulation against the cold. Very good. But of course, the roads are still not paved around them. and this is a Soviet era off-road, heavy, very heavy, weighing is full metal, like a Jeep. And with that, you can drive perfectly in these conditions. But with that sedan right here, no chance. Russia in the imagination of propagandists, and also you can see this in Tucker Carlson Moscow subway video. Moscow subway is a very, very isolated event in Russia. It is the most beautiful subway station in Russia, and that's the one he showed. What he didn't show is Russian reality, and that's how most of the Russia looks like, not the most prettiest subway station in Moscow. We looked at cities already. Now let's look at villages. This is how Russian villages, and there are tens of thousands, if not 50, 60, over that, thousands of villages. Maybe some villages have 1,000 residents, maybe some have 500. It's a very typical village. These are country houses, most of them built in the beginning of the last century, in the Tsarist time or right after that, and they have not been renovated almost ever. And as you can see, these Tsarist era buildings, they have very beautiful architecture. I have to say, the windows and the little top thing over here, I don't know what it is. It's very pretty, but they don't renovate them, and people live in them, and they're a huge fire hazard. As you can see, this one has been burnt. And again, we can see the trash issue, because if you don't clean the trash, you can just steal the money that was supposed to go to the guys who should clean the trash. So the money meant for cleaning this trash is going to the pockets of the mayor of this city, perhaps, I would guess. Here we can see Putin taking a bath in the pothole previously mentioned. Nothing to see here. I'm sorry, the memes are so spicy, it's pretty good. My friends, it's a match. We finally have found a date for Kerch Bridge, and it is a Storm Shadow missile. Why am I talking about this? Because there has been a hint, a very serious hint, that UK will announce in the future. I know it sounds really ridiculous, but will announce in the future that they will lift all restrictions on Storm Shadow missiles, meaning that they can be used on Russian soil. Right now they can't. Whatever you have been reading on the Western headlines, they can't. The official annunciation has not been published, and the restrictions have not been lifted. I know you have read, like in the past 2 days, every media outline has been screaming that the United States and Great Britain, they have lifted restrictions. Not true. Officially, they have not lifted them. So right now we're still waiting for it. London will allow Kyiv to fire Storm Shadow missiles deep into Russian Federation. The Guardian quoted sources in the British government as saying, I love it. I want it to happen, but I want it to happen yesterday. We're still waiting even now. After these tens of headlines later, we're still waiting. And just to illustrate how ridiculous it is, I mean, the United States is afraid of escalation. Italy is afraid of escalation. Germany, perhaps even the United Kingdom with their restrictions on Storm Shadow. And then there's the Netherlands, who say our F-16s can be used on Russian soil and in the Russian airspace anywhere Ukraine wants them to use. Netherlands, which is in the military terms a lot weaker country than all of these countries, but still they don't care, because their citizens perished in 2014 in the shoot down of the Malaysian Airlines. They have a beef with the Russians. It's their payback. Now, my friends, I'll do for the last time of this week Friday's edition of Estonian pronunciation or Estonian butchering of Buy Me a Coffee names. Are you ready? Do you have your earplugs in, because your ears are about to bleed? Let's go. Frank Hobin, Jakub Provaznik, Karen Rian, Ket Honsho a Voman Schep had enough of him. I'll say that again just to make the bleeding more intense. Ket Honsho a Voman Schep had enough of him. Thank you, my friends, for watching. Thank you to these people who support me on Buy Me a Coffee. You guys allow me to do what I do 3 times a week, and I'll keep doing it for you. I'll keep doing it for free forever. But thank you if you want to support. It means a lot to me. Until my next video, which will be on Monday, go and get your grandmother t-shirt, which has a Ukrainian drone destroying a Russian T-72 at rehi.com. Be back on Monday. Slava Ukraini, and bye-bye.